Hey guys, welcome to week 3 of Xcode Android lessons. Today we're not going to be talking about too much. Last lesson was a pretty basic introduction to views, and I'm sure you guys are still trying to figure out the different the different little widgets that you can use for Xcode and Android. So today is just going to be a relatively simpler topic, which is just how do you switch views? So first off, I would just give you a little introduction. We're going to talk about how views work in general. Then I'm going to get into the more specifics for Xcode and Android and show you guys demos for both of them. And then finally, again, more coding tips. And yep, that'll be it. So just like with last week, you can most certainly skip around. Like if you're only coding in Android, you can just skip straight to the Android demo and just skip the Xcode part and vice versa. So first, what's a view? A view is basically like a page on your app. So have you ever clicked a button and suddenly went into a different menu or something like that? That is just your app switching views. So you can see here with the iPhone example, unfortunately, I couldn't find a good one for Android, but surely Android has Android works a similar way. So you've in the different apps, you can basically click on a button or something, and suddenly you'll go into a tinier menu or go to a different page. So this is just the app switching views. And basically a view holds all the widgets in your app. And iOS and Android, they deal with changing views a little bit differently, but the general concept of views are pretty much the same in iOS and Android. So for both Android and iOS, you have to have classes that control views. So for different views, you have to have different classes to control them. This is basically the controller part of the model view controller paradigm. So each time you make a new view, you basically have to make a new class that's in charge of that new view. And these classes can also pass information between each other. So they can send messages, they can cause different things in different views.
So first, we're going to be talking about how to switch between views in Xcode. So right now, I just have a basic Xcode project open. What I have over here is just a view with a label in the center, and then my label outlet. You don't have to worry about the label for now. So for Xcode, views are controlled by this class called view controllers. So basically, for each one of these view templates, you should have a unique view controller that controls it. In order to add a bunch of different controllers, you actually have to add yet another view controller. So basically, if you go up to this right-hand side, click the plus button. I'm just going to search for view controller, or just kidding, tab bar controller. So this is one of the more basic navigation controllers. What these are basically if you've ever used an iOS app that just had a little bar of different pages that you could just click around at the bottom, that's basically a tab bar controller. So I'm gonna first minimize this and we're gonna focus on this. So over here you have a bunch of different items, and you can basically, when you run this app, you can click on these items at the bottom and it'll switch views for you. So what we're first gonna do is, if you notice in this original view controller, there's a little arrow to the left side of it. That's basically showing you which view you're going to be starting on when you open the app. So we're going to have to take this arrow and point it to the tab bar controller, because we want the basically the parent view to be the tab bar controller, so that we're able to click on these, and then the tab bar controller will show us the correct view controller over here. So you see these arrows over here, and these are called segues. Basically, the tab bar controller right now will only point to these two view controllers. So we're actually gonna, in order to access this view controller over here, we're actually gonna have to make the tab bar controller point to this view controller. So first, I'm just gonna delete this extra controller. We're not gonna need that. And I'm just gonna put this right over here. What we're gonna do is we're gonna click on this tab bar controller, then drag to the original view controller. And then you see that there's a list of possible segues that we can have. Don't worry about the list right now. Segues are very complicated. They're one way to pass information between view controllers, but we're not going to worry about that for now. What we need to do is say that we're just going to click on the relationship segue view controllers over here, and another arrow is going to pop up. So basically right now, we've connected our original view controller to this tab bar controller. So now the tab bar controller can access it. So at the bottom here, you see that we have item 1 as highlighted in blue. That's going to be the active view controller when the app first loads. You can definitely switch between items just by dragging and then dropping whichever order you want. The one on the left is always going to be the first one to pop up. All right, and you can even change the text and icons for these by just going to the inspector and then messing with all of the attributes under the attributes inspector. So what we're going to do next is we're just going to create a new view controller for this item 1 view, because we basically want a unique controller for every single view we have over here. So we're finished with this for now. So we can create a new view controller by going to the projects over here, or just kidding, by going up to Files, New, and then New File, or Command N. And then we're going to select New Cocoa Touch class. And then make sure that this new class is a subclass of view controller, because we want to make a new view controller. And I'm just going to call this second page controller. Personally, I like to have all my view controller classes end with controller, just so that I know personally that they're a view controller class. So we're going to click next and then create. And then I'm just going to open the second page controller. And then there we go. We have the second page controller. Then I'm gonna All right, so right now because we created a view controller class, Xcode has basically given us a template to do whatever we want with it. I'm just going to delete these extra comments over here. So first, we're going to have to connect the second view controller to the actual class itself. So I'm just going to open the inspector, and then we're going to go to this class, or just kidding, this identity inspector. And this basically tells us all the information we need about like the class, whatever IDs that we've created for this view controller. So the main thing we're going to have to look into is this class. See, right now it's grayed out because we haven't attached the actual view controller class to it. I'm going to kick the drop down, and we have a bunch of these kinds of classes, but most importantly, I'm going to be looking for the view controller class I just created. So second page controller, and I'm going to specify that this view over here is being controlled by my second page controller. And then afterwards, you can add whatever widgets you want. So for example, I can add like a button. Just kind of put it in the very center of my app. And there we go. So that way, when I run this, I'm basically going to have an app where there are two views, both with buttons. And I'm going to be able to switch between them freely with my tab bar controller. Or sorry, the first one has a label, my bad. So right now I have item 1, which has a label, and then I can click at the bottom of here and switch to my second page, which has a button. And basically for Xcode, that's how you're going to switch between pages. Unfortunately, I can't really go over how to pass information between these views because there are like 10 different ways to do it. I would recommend you in resources, go to the view controller tutorial link. And then this is basically a giant page that tells you all the possible different ways you can pass information between view controllers. For Xcode, like there are different ways for different situations. So like sometimes if you want to pass like information to like a really specific view controller, or in other situations, you might want to use like a different method and stuff like that. So that's it for Xcode.
All right, so next we're going to be talking about how do you make new views in Android Studio. So I'm just kind of building off the project, Android Studio project that we created for last time's demo. So all I've done is I've gone ahead and I've created a new view. So basically, the general gist of how views work in Android is that views are controlled by these types of classes called activities. So activities are basically the view controllers for Android, and you can pass different information between activities using this class called intents. Intents are basically they're pretty powerful classes, and there's a lot more to them than simply just passing info between views. But for all intents and purposes, we're just going to be talking about them as if they just pass on information between views. So first off, for activities, you have your activity class over here, and the activity .xml. So how you create a new activity just by going to this project menu, right-clicking, going under New, Activity. They give you a bunch of templates, but for now, we're just going to be making an empty activity. And then you can name it just however you like. And then make sure it's Java and click Finish. I've already created my second activity, so you can add whatever you like. I've just added a text view for now, a text, and we've called it second page text. So this all looks good. Just make sure you constrain all your widgets again. So that's all for this activity main2.xml. So we're just gonna be going over the code. So instead of jumping right into this second activity.java class, we're just gonna first add a little bit more to this main activity.java. So I've already gone ahead and created a private static final string. So this is basically a class string constant called extra that just has this, that's just this one string called main activity. And then if you remember last time we created this event handler on click, I've also added this new intent instance. So basically, again, intents are just meant to pass information between your activities. So in the constructor for your intent, the first parameter is a context, and the second parameter takes in the class. So fortunately for us, main activity inherits or is a subclass of context. And for this second part, we're just gonna be targeting the second. Sorry, I just realized I've named this pretty badly, but main activity 2.class. So we're passing in this second main activity class. So now I'm just gonna get rid of this. Basically for intents, they also have this dictionary that takes in a key value pair called extras. And these actually hold like the information that you can pass between activities. So we're just gonna go ahead and we're gonna just put an extra. So we're just gonna be adding an extra key value pair. So that's where this string constant comes in. We're just going to be adding extra, comma, let's put in a random string. So the second activity, you can basically pass in anything, but for now I'm just going to pass in a string. So I don't have to, I don't exactly have to do any conversion when I'm setting the text string in the second activity. And then we're also going to just start activity. Oops. And then we're going to pass an intent. And this is just going to start this main activity 2 view. So if I ran the program in the simulator right now, for the general gist is that whenever I click this button in the first activity, it'll create a new intent. It'll pass on this string that's just second activity. Actually, let's just, yeah, there. The second activity start string. And then it'll go ahead and it'll start the main activity 2 over here. So for main activity 2, basically, if I ran this right now, it will most certainly start this main activity 2. But then the question becomes, how do I get this extra that I've passed in through my intent? So basically, we're gonna grab the second intent, or this intent, by calling this method getIntent. So if you see that, if you get this error that it's not recognizing this class, you can just press Alt-Enter, and then it'll automatically import it for you up here. So next, we're just gonna grab the string from the intent. So what should we call it? We can call it message or something like that. Intent dot get string extra. So this will be looking for extra that has a string value. And then we're just going to get main activity dot extra. And then next, we're just gonna, just like with the onClick event handler that we did last time, we're just gonna find the view by ID. So remember that the capital R is for resources, and then we're getting an ID. And what did I call it? I called it second page text. And then we're gonna just set the text with the message. And then if you notice here, this extra is red. So that's just because I've set the visibility of this wrong. So we're just going to change that to public. And there we go. So when this runs, now what it should be able to do is that it will start this main activity, and this main activity will be able to grab the string from the intent and then set the text view that we have over here to the second activity started. But then the next question becomes, well, how, like, if I get to the second activity, how do I go back? So for Android, what they actually do is they have this Android manifest, and this just tells you all of the page hierarchies for the for like all the views that you have. So basically, like if I have a bunch of activities, like which activities are like the top layer, like the main activities, and which ones are kind of the child activities. So what we need to do over here is that we need to say that the parent of main activity 2 is main activity. So we have to basically have this tag parent activity name equals and this main activity. That way, when this app runs, you will actually get a back button to this main activity automatically without having to like program in extra stuff. So now let's try to build and run this app. There you go. So if I click here, it's showing this text, and then we get the back button. So this is a basic way of just building a basic Android app where you can have multiple pages. All right. So finally, I'm just going to be giving you guys a few more coding tips and resources that I think would be pretty useful. So first off, just some more coding tips of the week. So first off, keep your code modular. What I mean by that is when you're doing mobile development, and honestly, for a lot of other kinds of like software too, you're going to be dealing with code that has a lot of classes. So for example, like in Xcode and even in Android, like every time you make a new view, that's a new class. And you're going to have to make a bunch of other classes for just like for your model too in your app. So the most important thing is that you have to make sure that your classes are designed to only do one thing. And what I mean by that is like when you create a class, like for example, if I want to make an app that runs a game, for example, and I make a game class. That class should only run the game. It shouldn't do anything else. It shouldn't like be in charge of creating the UI or anything. Because that way, if anything breaks in that class, or if I suddenly want to completely redo the class, that won't break the rest of my code. So you want to make sure that your classes are sort of quarantined off so that they aren't, if they change like very drastically, they won't end up forcing you to change the rest of your code. Like your classes aren't too dependent on each other. Next is always prioritize readability over efficiency. So a lot of times when you code, especially when like you're the only person working on your code, you people tend to basically want to make their code run with the fewest lines possible, or make their code run as fast as possible. But that's not always the best thing to do, because when you try to write your code with the fewest lines or make it run the fastest, you end up implementing a lot of basically sketchy hacks that kind of to like any outsider would read like gibberish. And the issue that comes up with that is that like when you come back to your code, like a few weeks or even a few days later, suddenly like you don't know what that piece of code does. And then it'll take even more time to just figure out like what's up with the code rather than actually getting any work done. Especially with long-term projects that involve teams like Technovation, you want to make sure that a stranger can just read your code and understand what it does, and kind of understand why you wrote that kind of code. So your code, I wouldn't say like it has to read like English, but basically anyone who's familiar with language could see like why you wrote your code and what your code does. That way, it's not only beneficial to your teammates who might also want to look at the code, but also for you later on. Like maybe a month later, you want to just like change a class or something, or add something new to the class. You want to make sure that like the future you can basically read the code too. And then finally, know what you copy. So a lot of times, especially when it comes to coding, we tend to basically just go on Google or Stack Overflow and just copy like the first working solution that pops up in the search results. That's not like a bad thing to do, to be honest. I've also copied a lot of code, but the thing is that like you shouldn't just be blindly copying and pasting other people's code into your work. What you want to do in order to like learn while you do projects is you want to understand what you're copying and just understand like why the solution works. So for me, like whenever I'm copying code, I actually don't just Control C, Control V. I'll retype it in my file and I'll change the variables, or I'll kind of change the code structure so that I so that I understand like what's actually going on in the code. Another reason you might want to do that is because not all solutions you find online are 100% perfect. So sometimes like the highest voted solution in Stack Overflow might have a few hidden bugs. So when you're retyping that code, you're kind of also critically thinking about it. You're kind of like trying to figure out like, oh, why did they write this line? Or like, what does this line mean? And when you're doing that, you might actually catch some bugs that like other people might not have caught. So basically, as long as you understand what you're copying, you can learn through copying other people's code. Finally, here are just some useful links that I think might help you when you're coding. So the first one is just an official Android activity tutorial. It basically goes over the same stuff I go over in the Android Studio demo, but everything's written down, and they also explain a few extra stuff. The second one is just a Xcode view controller tutorial. So this basically is a giant list of all the possible ways you can basically pass data between view controllers. That way, like hopefully, like that would be able to help you while you're coding. Lastly, if you have any questions about this week's video or any like of the stuff we've talked about before in the past classes, feel free to reach out. My email is jzang60@umd.edu, and you can even DM me on Discord, and that's my username. Yep, so if you have any questions or you want my help debugging your app, feel free to just contact me. All right, thanks for watching this lesson, and hopefully I'll see you on Saturday.